Kathy, if last night felt like a moment when thousands gathered, then the momentum and the defiance is still palpable tonight. Earlier, protesters turned up here at New Scotland Yard to make their voices heard. They are angry. There are accusations that the Metropolitan Police were heavy-handed last night.
And she's come out fighting, but there are still calls for Cressida Dick to go, aren't there?
Yes, repeated calls for the Commissioner to resign. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, says there are still unanswered questions. She has said there now will be a review into exactly what happened. I think the key questions that are going to be asked of the Metropolitan Police are, was the force they used last night appropriate compared to other COVID gatherings we've seen throughout the pandemic? And were they right to cancel an organised vigil? The police say they had to. They were acting within COVID government regulations. But one thing that they can all agree on is that this is not the outcome anybody wanted.
They were told to stay at home, but they came anyway to light up the streets for Sarah Everards.
Now, this was supposed to be the cancelled vigil, but as you can see, thousands of people have come out anyway. Sarah Everards has brought out an uncomfortable truth for many women who simply do not feel safe on the streets. They want their voices to be heard.
You got a sense in the crowd last night that at any moment the atmosphere was about to turn nasty, and it did. The images of women being restrained by officers have appalled many. The Metropolitan Police say they were left with no choice after big crowds congregated with the risk of COVID-19 spreading. This photo of 27-year-old Patsy Stephenson's arrest has hit a national nerve.
They arrested me in cuffs, dragged me away, surrounded by like 10 police officers, and when I got in the van they said, we just need your name and your address and then we'll let you go with a fine. So I don't see the point of the arrest, to be honest.
Sarah was a woman similar age to us, lived in the same area to us, and all she was doing was walking home. She had every right to be able to walk home safely. She did everything right. She wore high-vis clothing. She walked along the main streets. She rang her boyfriend.
Do you feel safe to walk down the streets?
No. Absolutely not.
No?
No. Absolutely not. And I personally use keys in my hands. I know that like loads of women do the same thing. I don't know about you two, but
my sister, as a present, I was gifted rape alarms. Because
rape alarms?
Rape alarms.
Men have to change, men have to take action, and men have to rethink the way that they're behaving and interacting on the streets everywhere.
Tonight there are serious questions being asked about the police's response, accused across the political parties of being heavy-handed. And repeated calls for Dame Cressida Dick to resign, but tonight the Commissioner said her officers had no choice but to enforce the law.
None of us would have wanted to see the scenes we saw at the end of yesterday's events. Worth saying, of course, I fully understand the strength of feeling, I think, as a woman, and hearing from people about their experiences in the past and what they feel about what happened to Sarah and what has been going on. I understand why so many people wanted to come and pay their respects and kind of make a statement about this. Indeed, if it had been lawful, I'd have been there. I'd have been at a vigil.
The question will now be asked of the Met, was their response last night in Clapham consistent with policing at vigils across the UK?
There do seem to have been these instances later on in the evening where there are scenes and photographs that are incredibly upsetting. So I suspect the report, I hope, will address all of those issues so that we get a full picture of the decisions that were made yesterday.
Everybody who saw the images and footage of what happened last night would find it really disturbing. It was the wrong response from the police. It's right that it's now being looked into, and there will be these reports now, but it was the wrong response. It was deeply disturbing.
But a former chief constable has told us the police have a difficult line to tread during COVID.
Through the pandemic, police officers absolutely felt caught in the middle, and damned if they do and damned if they don't. But particularly on this issue about protests, and there have been political protests, political pressure about particular protests like Extension Rebellion and Black Lives Matter.
As Priti Patel called the scenes last night upsetting, tomorrow the Home Secretary will try to bring in new laws to give greater powers to police at protests. Labour say they'll vote against the bill, as some Conservative MPs also criticise the police's response. All eyes will be on the House of Commons tomorrow as they vote. Pressure on the Metropolitan Police Commissioner this evening as protesters gathered outside New Scotland Yard. The Home Secretary said there were still questions that needed answering. As the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said the Met's response was completely unacceptable after a night when they came to be heard and some left in handcuffs.